Chapter 57, The Heartbreaker. Tomboy had shifted gears and was now making homoerotic jokes all in Michael's expense. The pool game Michael and Roxana were having earlier had completely deteriorated away into a game of grab ass. Michael would try to line up a shot as Roxana would give a reach around and say to Michael, "Maybe you'd have better luck shooting with this." She was being totally out of character and Michael couldn't believe what he was seeing. She was no longer modest about it and she was now about as spread open as the legs of a Parisian whore. Wow, does that naked girl's presence have something to do with this? And then Roxana toppled over Michael on top of the pool table and began demanding him to take her then and there. "No, Roxy, for fuck's sakes, my sister's here," mumbled out Michael while laughing. "What's wrong, Michael? Can't get it up? Would it be better if I was to join in?" mumbled out Tommy in a drunken stupor. "No, Tommy, you're not my type. I like my men hairy and bearish." Roxana began laughing her ass off, rolling around, still on top of Michael, covering Michael up with her sweat. But then she accidentally rolled off the table, fell, and began puking all over the floor. Mary had then showed a different side in that moment as she broke out of her boredom, crouched over Roxy, and tried to help her. "Tommy, get a bucket," yelled out Mary. But Tommy was still too busy laughing. "Oh, I feel sick," muttered out Roxy while trying to hold it in. "Excuse me, I don't know your name. Are you hurt at all?" demanded Mary. "No, I don't think," and then began spewing all over the place again. Luckily, Mary knew better than to face her. "Oh, my insides feel like they're gonna come out next." "Hurry, come on, let's get you to the restroom," cried out Mary. Mary quickly got Roxana to her feet and had her rushing to the ladies' room. Tomboy finally stopped laughing and decided he should take some consideration as he got up and went to get a busboy to come by. "Ah, shit," thought Michael. It was now just Michael and Nikki there at the corner of the bar. "Ah, shit, she has me now." Michael still felt way too intoxicated to get up off the pool table. She might be able to mount me now, and I wouldn't even be able to do anything about it. And so then Michael tried to lift his head up to see how it would feel. But the second he did, it began spinning like a top, so Michael plopped it back down, since he really didn't like how that felt. Continuing to lay there on top of the pool table, he heard the sound of Nikki's heels then, clicking and clacking, clicking and clacking, clicking and clacking. Slowly over to him, and something about the sound of women's heels making that sound always got Michael excited, really excited, and a little tense, especially the louder they got. "Are you okay? You don't need to throw up too, do you?" asked Nikki, puckering up with her lips a bit. "Nah, I ain't at that point." Nikki smiled. "Yet," finished Michael. Michael then tried to lift his head again, but this time just to look at her. She seemed in control. "You know, I've met a lot of girls in my life, but I can't think I've ever met anyone like you before," blurted out Michael. "Oh, how's that?" pouted out Nikki, colored with intrigue. "Well, usually from my experience, it tends to be the guy that tries to what?" asked Nikki sarcastically. Michael just smiled and didn't respond. Nikki then lurched over the pool table and onto her stomach and began eyeing Michael like she was full of secrets. Her feet went straight up into the air and began rocking back and forth while her toes played with her heels, flapping them off and on her feet like a clapper. "Okay, you caught me. I give up," disclosed Nikki with her mouth partially opened some. Then stuck her hands out like giving herself up to a cop, ready to be handcuffed. Michael had a small chuckle from her playfulness. "You're not gonna deny it?" asked Michael, a bit not surprised. "No, I think I made it pretty obvious." Never had Michael met a girl so on the offensive as this girl Nikki was tonight. With this girl, wow, simply wow, gotta say, feels really interesting to be on the other end for once. Even in her effeminately soft-spoken ways, she carried the grace of a hunter, and Michael felt like he was in love for the first time in his life. I fucking am. I'm sorry, Roxy, but fuck, I can't. "So what now?" asked Michael. "I don't know," said Nikki, nodding her head instead of shaking it. At this point, Tomboy came back into the frame with a busboy. He glared at Michael and Nikki on top of the pool table and didn't seem surprised whatsoever. "Well, I'm gonna go to the roof, have a cigarette. If you feel like you can stand up." Then come have a chat with me. I'd like that. Nikki winked and then left. Michael felt torn. On one side, there was Roxana in the restroom, probably dry heaving right about now, as Mary held her head over a toilet. And as much as he wanted to go see if she was all right, he was also pretty sure Roxana wouldn't want him to see her in that state. One side, and on the other, there was Nikki, and Michael had a notion. It's only for a cigarette, just one. How much could it hurt if I was to join in? And then thought, don't be gullible. You know she wants more, you know how you do too. Michael then pulled out a quarter and thought, heads, I get the cig. Tails, I don't. And as he flipped it, while still on his back on that pool table, it then landed on his forehead. At first, he laughed at how horrible his motor skills had become, considering he couldn't even flip a simple coin and catch it easily enough. But as Michael felt that quarter on his forehead laying there, an eerie feeling went through him that he really didn't like. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do, stupid. Michael then looked at the results and saw tails. Fuck you. You trying to tell me that it would be a mistake if I went? Well, fuck you. I just want a cig from her. And that's... Michael then thought that maybe it would be a mistake, but then felt, I don't give a shit. I want to see her. Michael was now on the roof of the Tropic of Cancer. It had taken him a while to get to his feet, and the second he did, it felt like his head wanted to spin off his neck and start pinballing off the walls. The roof of the Tropic was especially decorated for unique occasions. There was wooden framework set up to roof giant orange nylon sheets which hung and sagged all around. The area was mostly lit up with cheap decorations since the joint was a cheap dive with Christmas lights and Chinese lanterns. But which did manage to liven up the spaces with something quaint. There were also cushy couches placed about around wooden tables that had Turkish hookahs on them. Oddly enough, even on a hot Saturday night like this one, the only two people up there were Michael and Nikki. Michael then stumbled up to Nikki, who was facing away, smoking while looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Hey, said Michael simply. And then all of a sudden, at that second there, a gust of wind blew in and lifted Nikki's dress up to show Michael how she wasn't wearing any underwear. Oh, fuck me. What was that I saw? What was that? She has this small gap between her thighs exposing herself completely, and even when her thighs are together, wow, that was beautiful, simply beautiful. And the second when her dress blew up like that, her lips down there looked like they were practically blowing me a kiss. Fuck, I feel horny now. Hey, replied Nikki. Now, Michael felt things had gotten past that, such formalities. I thought there would be more people up here, wondered Michael. Oh, fuck me. I feel like that image will be burnt into my memory forever. Maybe now even burn into my soul. Nikki said nothing as she handed back a cigarette without turning around. Michael lit the cig and wondered where to start. So, you and Mary are friends? Asked Michael rhetorically. Nikki then turned, smiled at Michael, as she had been all night. Wow, look at the expression in her eyes right now. Hungry fucking eyes, I tell you. She looks like a starving wolf. She wants sex, alright. Fuck, why couldn't I have met her before getting with Roxy? At least for one night. No, I can't do this. So, you think me and Roxana make a cute couple? Asked Michael, seeing as to what her reaction would be bringing up Roxy's name. I think you two are delicious. Michael's already pretty hammered. It felt like his brains had been removed and his skull had been topped off with all the cheap beer he'd been drinking. And every time he moved his head, he felt it swoosh and splash about in there. He was already feeling very, very tipsy, so hearing now the two of them look delicious got Michael a little too... Michael, you okay? Said Nikki after Michael had lost his balance and plopped back on his ass and was now just sitting there, unsure of how he got there. You're not hurt, are you? Asked Nikki with some concern, but... Michael then began laughing his ass off nearly, for he felt so hammered and horny and helpless all at the same time that the only thing he could do now was that. Then all of a sudden, another gush of wind came sweeping in, as it lit Nikki's dress ablaze, setting it on fire, frailed and frolicked about, and as if dancing with the devil. Michael now felt like he could no longer keep control of the lust building up inside as he continued to laugh, but also looked up and said, "So, now what?" And with that, Nikki giggled, and with one sweeping motion took off her entire dress. And she was now completely naked. The only items of her outfit that she was still wearing were her black heels, beige stockings, and white pearls around her neck. Wow, that has to be the reddest vertical smile I've ever seen. Did she spread lipstick on them too or something? What? Nikki then got on all fours and began crawling her way to him. Michael continued to laugh his ass off as he felt as if he was getting hornier by the second. And the hornier he got, seeing the sight of Nikki now prowling around like a panther as she was, made him laugh even harder. And seeing how Michael was reacting to her, Nikki then began reacting back, laughing herself, as she then pounced in the second she got near him, and had her way with him. The rest was rapture, and an hour later, they were finished. As Michael opened his eyes for a second there, he couldn't remember what had just happened. But then, shit. Remembered it all and then thought, what have I done? They were both on the long, spread-out couch. Nikki was on top of him, breathing in deeply, as her sweat-soaked bodies stroked up and down against his. And as Michael turned his head around to see if they were alone, he saw how they weren't. Shit. You gotta be. Seeing how Roxana was there standing near the roof's entrance, she had her mouth wide open, also breathing deeply, trying to take in the sight of Michael's affair. She looked sullen and confused as to what she was seeing, and seconds away from tearing up. But a second later, she did. "Tomboy told me you two were up here," said Roxana quietly with tears streaming down her cheeks. "Fucking Tomboy. I guess I should leave now." Roxana then slowly turned away to head back down, and it was obvious how she was feeling. Very obvious how depressed and disgraced she felt from everything. "Oh, Rox, wait." But then Nikki got up and started striding over to her fast. Wait, what is she doing? She was moving fast now, and her heels were pounding the ground hard, stopping Michael's heartbeat nearly with every step. And as Roxana noticed this, she jumped back, fearing maybe how she might be attacked. "What are you doing?" gasped Roxana. Michael then jumped up, alarmed at the thought that this Nikki girl actually might attack her. But then was awestruck with what he saw next. Once Nikki got up to Roxana, she kissed her straight on the lips. And she didn't just kiss those lips, she fucking devoured them. Nikki moaned out loud, and now both Michael and Roxana felt beside themselves. Who the fuck is this girl? Shush, said Nikki, as she began feasting on her lips again. Roxana then shoved Nikki away and said, "What are you? I don't want this." Nikki, on the other hand, growled a bit with her eyes and glared a bit with her lips. As she cocked her head to one side along with her hips, smiled and then said, "But I do." Listen, baby, don't be upset. Tonight, I didn't just make the conscious decision to get to Michael. I also wanted you there along with him, explained Nikki with her mouth partially open. Roxana took a step back. "I wanted to fuck both your brains out." Roxana took another step back. "You know, I've never had Persian before. I wonder what they taste like." Now it looked like Roxana was about to turn and run, but Nikki stuck her hand out and began wiping away her tears. She grew a sympathetic face and began with the real voodoo. "Don't go there. Don't go to that place in your mind where you feel all alone and full of hurt. You don't deserve that." Roxana then stopped. "Baby, you don't need that heartache. I see that you're a very sweet and sensitive girl. Such a sweetheart. And I don't want to see you go down that road and feel hurt." "Don't cry," expressed Nikki. Her eyes glimmered a bit, and Michael couldn't tell if she was just feeding Roxana what Roxana might have wanted to hear, or she was being genuine with her, and expressing herself from a deep down place in her own heart that understood and wanted to connect with Roxy. Nikki took her right hand and began to wipe away the tears rolling down her face again, and once she did, Roxana then took a small step in her direction. "Give in to me, please," begged Nikki, like she was aching for it. "But I've never," blurted out Roxana, shivering all over from intimidation, from what she was experiencing, feeling of appall or possible appeal. "Do you think I'm pretty?" asked Nikki as she waved her hair around a bit teasingly and childlike like Farrah Fawcett. "But I've never," blurted out Roxana again as she began eyeing Nikki with some possible growing desire. "You don't think I'm pretty?" murmured Nikki, this time making a puffy, sad face. "No, it's not. You're beautiful, but..." Nikki smiled and now grew ecstatic, whooshing her hair wildly and licking her lips. "Well, I think you're beautiful too." Roxana took another step forward. "You're so beautiful, the thing I would do to you if you only gave me the chance," expressed Nikki as she forced a seductive stare into her, all hypnotic-like. And Roxy didn't seem like Roxy no more. She no longer seemed like her old self, her headstrong self, and whatever magic this Nikki was doing to her seemed like it was winning her over, seeming as if responsive fully to something only they both understood. Michael didn't know what was going on, but maybe something that had been going on while he hadn't been paying attention to, the entire night long even. Is this shit really happening? Her head started swaying then, all woozy-like, as her mouth cocked open also a little. And now she was taking in quick and short breaths and syncing with Nikki's, all together. And now her eyes were shivering along with Nikki's too, and seeing into what was about to happen next. What's about to happen? Nikki then dropped to her knees and lifted Roxy's dress and began trying to take off her panties. Roxana at first tried to pull Nikki's hands away, but Nikki then began kissing Roxana's hands, sucking on her fingers while looking up at her. Roxana then stopped trying to fight off the attempts. As she looked away, it didn't seem like she wanted to fight it anymore, as the spell became too much for her to resist. Now she had the panties off, and now she waited for Roxy to turn her head back around and make eye contact, anticipated for it, as she made Roxy anticipate also. We can't do..." And now she saw herself on that end, about to be devoured. Oh, and now was. Roxana had tried to hold it off as long as she could, but once she looked down, Nikki went straight in and began. Roxana, still unwilling, stared away again, as she seemed to be trying to fade away into a world of her own, casting herself away from all this. But then the real sensations down there slowly began creeping their way up, as Roxy was now no longer able to pretend that what Nikki was doing to her wasn't happening. Roxy's mouth began quickly opening and closing as she began shivering like crazy. The muscle tensions in her thighs began firing off like pistons pushed to their max, and her knees looked like they couldn't take it much longer and were about ready to break. "No, please," squirmed out Roxana. "But why?" "You're so fucking delicious," moaned out Nikki, and with that last line, Roxana's knees buckled as she fell to the floor, as her engines blew out, and Roxana was now finished. She was done. Kaput. The two now were in a sexually charged world of their own, and Michael could do nothing but watch. It was obvious that this was Roxana's first time with another woman, and more importantly, coming to the realization that she would like it at all. And from what Michael saw, she did. She was having a sexual revolution right then and there, and all thanks to the woman with the devilishly red dress. At first, Roxana didn't seem like she knew at all what she was doing, but Nikki was quick to teach. And as reluctant as Roxana was when Nikki first made the initiative, she was now completely open to whatever experience Nikki had in store for her. She was in complete surrender, on her knees, loving and moaning every minute of it. They were like wild animals now, giving in to their own primal needs. Michael, on the other hand, still felt beside himself on what to do or think. Question marks, thought Michael. But then Nikki stopped, turned her head around, and looked straight at him. "Ah, shit, I'm next." Nikki then turned her head back to Roxanne and told, ordered practically for her to go sit next to him, and Roxana complied and nothing else. To Michael, she now seemed like a completely different person. Before all this, Roxana was a very independent-minded girl, boldly uninterested in the opinions and ideas of others, no matter if they were bad or good. Michael would even have a hardest time trying to convince her to try to do anything with him. Even going out to shoot some pool was her idea, mostly because she knew how badly she was going to whoop Michael's ass in it. Before Michael had to spend an hour trying to convince her to go joyriding with him on his chopper, she was being hesitant and all. And because she didn't like the idea of sitting bitch behind him, as she had put it. Now there didn't seem to be an ounce of willpower left in the girl. She was like an automaton, a vegetable. She had no soul. As she sat next to Michael, her brainwashed eyes looked onto his and looked ready for her next instructions. Ah, shit, she's like the Manchurian candidate. Roxana, you there? Baby, why don't you give Michael a kiss? Ordered Nikki. Roxana then smiled and complied. And as excited as Michael had gotten from all this wild passion and black magic, it was also beginning to scare him shitless. No, baby. Kiss him down there, ordered Nikki again. Roxana smiled again, even more senselessly. Then she bent her head down and did as Nikki had asked. Just like that, you got her too. After that night, Michael didn't see Roxana for several days. But when he did, the first thing he noticed was how distant she seemed. After 6 months of being in a relationship, they seemed like strangers now. And Michael wasn't sure of what it all meant. Whatever spell that Nikki girl had on her was no longer there, and she seemed to be herself again, but I was curious to know what she thought about the night we had. Michael had seen her walking down the street, and as he tried to greet her, Roxy completely ignored him at first. As she walked past, Michael began to grow worried that night must have really had a negative effect on her once her better judgment had set back in. Yeah, I got the feeling also that night that Roxy was just going along with the whole threesome thing as an effort to spare herself the heartache of what I had done. Go along with it as to have taken part in it also and not have it seem as bad, having been left out, I guess. I don't know, that's the only sense I could make with her becoming that open to the whole thing. But I do believe it had to have done a number on her, eventually, with it all setting in, with her really coming to terms with what she had done. Yeah, all I can do is cringe thinking about it. Michael then ran up to Roxy and called out to her, Roxy, I'm... And now Michael got her to turn around and react to him. Roxy, I'm sorry about that night. But then Roxy smiled and shook her head and greeted him as if though nothing had happened. Roxy, how do you feel about what happened? I didn't even know that girl, and... Don't worry, Michael. It was just a crazy night. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. Responded Roxy with a faint smile. Michael didn't know if Roxy was hiding how she really felt, or if she really wasn't bothered by it at all. No, Roxana, tell me the truth, pleaded Michael. Michael then saw something bitter blow up in her face, but she then broke it off with a smile. Roxana, what is it? Roxana's eyes then glazed at Michael sympathetically. They twitched for a second, and then she said, Michael, I just learned my father has cancer. I'm just feeling really distraught by it, all that. That's all. Disclosed Roxy as her eyes twitched a bit more. Michael didn't know what to take from this story, but he knew from what he had remembered, her telling him about her father, that the man had been having some health problems, and figured it must have been true. I'm sorry, Roxy, to hear that. It's okay, Michael. Michael then began to wonder if he should stick by her and talk with her some more, help her out with what she was going through. Roxana, I got something right now. You want us to meet later tonight? Asked Michael. Roxana's eyes twitched a bit more, and then she said, Michael, I'm leaving for Rochester tonight to be with him. Okay, then I can see you when you return, said Michael rhetorically, even though he already knew what this was all leading up to. Maybe, Michael, maybe, concluded Roxana and left. Michael never saw Roxanne again after that, but he at least felt some relief that she wasn't as hurt as he'd feared. The present. I knew that that was the end of that. I knew. I just didn't want her to be too hurt by it. After her story, after everything she'd been through, I really didn't want it to end like that. And at the time, I really felt the worst. A real low down, dirty dog. Fuck, a real pig. Dogs at least are loyal to the end. Really felt disgusted with myself and deserving of her dumping me. But you didn't exactly try to work something out after that. You said nothing about the relationship and were hoping you wouldn't. Hoping it. Fine, fine. I was hoping to have it ended it there. That whole business of what she said, what I found fatal, that's all true. What she said then took everything I was hoping for in our relationship out. Just because she didn't believe in love anymore didn't mean I also now had to learn how not to. I at least wanted it. Something magical like that. And here's the thing. Now having thought about reflecting back to the 6 months of relationship I had with her, Roxy, even though she said she didn't want a relationship based totally on sex, that's exactly what it turned into being. And mostly because of her, not me. She's the one that turned it into that. It wasn't I. And she was the one that made the sex bland and boring, and it being better if we had just stayed friends, actually. That's the best thing about the whole relationship I had with her, the platonic shit. And that's it. But still, it did matter a lot to me that she wasn't going to be hurt by that whole ordeal. And I'm glad she wasn't. Was she? I mean, if she was really bothered by everything that happened that night, she would have said something, right? I mean, when she smiled at me then, she genuinely seemed like she was disgusted by everything and disgusted by me. I saw that in her eyes. None. No hatred for me in those eyes for what I had done. And I know when I see hatred or disgust, and that's not what I saw in them. But then again, that was the end of that. I'm guessing that night was just too much for her. Nice girl like her getting into some real hedonistic shit like that. A threesome? A fucking threesome? I mean, how could she handle it? Michael then began to think of Nikki again in a new light. Wow. Can't believe I've forgotten how Nikki was when we first met. Some cringy shit. Now to think about it, probably would be reasons I would want to forget. After Michael and Roxana went their separate ways, Michael didn't know what to think. He didn't know how to feel about that night, but he couldn't deny how excited it felt about this new Nikki person. At the time, Michael didn't think anything would come of it. It felt like all it was one crazy encounter 3 of them had shared. Great. I got bizarre love triangle playing in my head again, thinking about all this. Michael wasn't expecting to ever see Nikki again, unless through Mary. What else can you expect from the lady in red? But then the day after he saw Roxy for the last time, Nikki was once again at the Tropic and she was once again ogling Michael, but now in a different way. What was strange was Nikki now seemed like a different person, like she and Michael were meeting again for the first time. She was modest and dressed modestly, even more so than Mary tended to, dressed completely in blue denim, from her jacket down to her pants. Yeah, also, she wasn't lusting after me like she was that night. She was acting completely different, like she wanted to get to know me, and at first meeting again sort of scared Mike, considering after what he had seen of her that night. As much as he liked what he saw at the time, he really was missing what Roxy had to offer, even if he eventually grew weary of it. He'd fooled around plenty with girls all over town, and it was wanting something much more. Something he could at least expect to get out of a girl in blue. But from a lady in red, this new Nikki was different, and what she seemed to be wanting to offer also seemed that way, and more aligned with what Roxy would have offered. She seemed happy, smiled a lot more, and didn't have that whole contradictory thing in her eyes, seeming all sad but not. She now seemed normal, well, in her own way. She still did have that hidden aspect about her that I also liked. Just so alluring. I don't know. Nikki has always been something else. A bit of an oddity, an enigma. But still, now there seemed to be something that seriously could develop between the two. But still, also, Michael also kept the memory of that devilishly red dress in the back of his mind, hoping to see it come out of her closet now and then. But yet again, what she was at that one night at the Tropic was something Michael wasn't sure if he could ever handle. Something like what I saw of her first at 1999. Huh? Michael didn't know exactly what it all meant, but he figured everyone had a dark side to them, even Nikki. Yeah, but can I still trust her? Can you? Shut up. She's nothing like that Flores bitch I met outside LaToya's place. Never used me like that. Me and Nikki. We had a moment there in the elevator. I felt it, and that's what matters. Unlike me and Roxy, we had a real thing. With Roxy, it was never going to work out. I knew that from the beginning. Nikki, I love her. I've loved her since the beginning. Ever since that first second I saw her. And deeply too. And for it felt like I was struck by lightning. I felt the magic. Meeting her for the first time that night, I felt like I had known her for years, since forever. I don't give a shit if she was manipulative, vicious, and intimidating back then too. So what? Everyone has a dark side. And just because she has hers doesn't mean that that's all there is to it. Plus, she was only that way because she just wanted some action. I've done plenty of horrible things for some action myself. Shit I regret now. After that, she was different around me. And she was her real self. And not that lady I saw tonight. Her real self. And that's that. I love her, and that's enough. Michael then sighed and now thought, shit. I've been standing here waiting for far too long now. I need to continue looking for those fucking night slashers and hopefully, God willing, find Nikki. But before Mike was able to start up the chopper and start looking, he then saw a figure in the distance. Michael squinted and then saw him better, and what he saw was, what the hell? Was a well-dressed man with a bowler hat.